us for tonight's virtual class. I'm Chris Hearn. I'm the West Tennessee Field Rep for the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. I work primarily with the Hunting and Fishing Academy, and I've really enjoyed sharing my knowledge about the outdoors through these virtual classes. I think we've got a really good one tonight. I think it'll be a big help as far as helping you find which quota hunts are going to suit you and then walk you through the application process. I actually done some screenshots of my application when I applied yesterday when this thing opened up. So I hope you guys get something out of it. Also joining me tonight is East Tennessee Field Rep Jeb Beasley. Jeb, would you like to introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit about the layout for tonight's virtual class?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Like Chris said, I'm the East Tennessee Field Rep for the Federation. Like Chris, work specifically with the Hunting and Fishing Academy, helping run our in-person events as well as these virtual classes. I'm really looking forward to this class tonight. Chris, we were talking earlier, I'm still kind of new to the quota hunts myself, but been getting into them a lot more in the past couple of years and learned a lot. So I'm excited to be here with you guys tonight and just share my experience and then also learn from Chris as well. So tonight, again, this is meant to be interactive for you guys. We want to cover some material pretty briefly, probably 25 to 30 minutes. It'll take us to go through that, but then we want to answer your questions. If you're new to hunting, or if you're just new to quota hunts, I know it can kind of seem confusing and there's a few things that you might not understand completely. So the way that you're going to ask questions tonight, if you see at the bottom of your page, if you're joining us for the first time, this is the webinar style, so we cannot see you guys, but we still want to hear from you. So any questions that you have, there's a Q&A button down there at the bottom of your screen. So click on that, type your questions in, and then me and Chris will be sure to get to those as we go through the course tonight. And then we'll have some designated time towards the end just to address your questions. So turn it back over to you, Chris.
So I want to go over just a little bit about what we're going to cover here tonight and kind of an overview, but we're going to talk about what a quota hunt is. And we're also going to talk to you about how you can find which WMAs have quota hunts and then which of those hunts is going to fit your needs. So in other words, what time of the year you would like to hunt, obviously one that's, maybe in your area, you're part of the state. And then, each of these hunts are weapon specific. So there's gun hunts, there's archery hunts, there's some that's just shotgun muzzleloaders. So we're going to walk you through how to find those different types of hunts. And then towards the end, we're going to walk you through the application process, how the draw works. And then, like I said, I've actually got screenshots of a screen by screen walkthrough of my application process. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. But Jeb, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can tell them a little bit about what the quota hunts are all about.
Awesome. All right. So like Chris said, the first thing we want to cover is just basically explaining what a quota hunt is. If you're new to deer hunting or hunting in general, you've probably heard that term. And so first thing we're going to do is just break it down and explain what it is, kind of how it works, why we have them. And then a little bit later, Chris is going to walk us through the application process and what it is you guys are going to need to know when getting ready to apply for these. So here in Tennessee, we're very fortunate that we have public lands that designated just for hunting. These lands are called wildlife management areas, and they're managed by Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. And they're available for you. They're available for your family to go out and utilize those. However, TWRA realizes that in some of these public hunting areas, these WMAs, the number of hunters needs to be restricted to a certain number so as not to cause a major impact on the resource. So in these certain areas, the agency utilizes a quota hunt system. So the state biologists determine how many animals need to be harvested, and then they determine how many permits need to be issued in order to reach their harvest goals for that area. And permits are allocated through an electronic drawing, and the result is what we get, what we call a quota hunt. And so just because you apply, though, doesn't mean that you will receive a tag. The quota hunt system will randomly select a specified number of hunters from a pool of applicants. Applications are processed through the online license center and through the TWRA license or any TWRA licensed agent. These permits are also non-transferable, so that's important to know. Is once you get a permit, that is your permit, and you can't go sell it, you can't give it, you can't gift it to anybody. That is your permit. So Tennessee also has what we call a priority point system in place for several of its quota hunts. An applicant is awarded 1 point for each year that he or she applies and is unsuccessful up to the maximum number for that particular hunt. And each point system is unique. It's separate from the different quota hunts. Chris is going to break that down in a lot more detail later. So I'm sure a lot of you guys will have questions on that. So don't worry, we're going to address that a little bit later as well. But using this system of quota hunts, it's actually a really good thing because it ensures that public hunting opportunities remain intact, but harvest numbers are well maintained to ensure that we have healthy populations going forward. So it's a really great system when utilized properly. And if you look across the state, you could really see the impacts that these quota hunts have on certain wildlife management areas. So they do a lot of good things in providing opportunity and helping manage the resource as well. So here in Tennessee, hunters can apply for bear quota hunts, deer, elk, sandhill crane, and even turkey and waterfowl. So the application process for each of these is very similar, but tonight we're going to be looking specifically at those big game quotas, mainly deer, since those just opened up yesterday morning. Let's look at an example real quick of how you might find a wildlife management area that has a quota hunt. It's important to know that not every wildlife management area requires a quota hunt, but several do. And so you need to make sure that you do your homework before you just go into an area and start hunting. We want to make sure that you guys are well prepared, that you know the rules and the regulations. So looking here, what you guys are looking at is a screenshot of the TWRA interactive maps that shows all the WMAs across the state. Those are the areas in green. So right now, this image, we've zoomed in kind of on the Middle Tennessee area. And if I was curious to see which WMAs required a quota tag to hunt, I could come to this page. I could take my browser and click on the specific WMA that I'm curious about. In this scenario, that we had selected AEDC. And so when you click on that WMA, there's going to be a little box that appears. Chris, go back to that last slide real quick. So you see this little box right here in white. There's going to be a couple different links down there at the bottom of it. And if you click on the one that says specific WMA information, that's going to bring you to this next page. So once you click on specific WMA information, you're going to get a page directly out of the hunting guide. That's where it basically links you just right to where this WMA section is in the current hunting guide. And it's going to show you all the specific regulations for this WMA that you selected. So it lists info like where the WMA is, how many acres it is, who the manager is, has their contact info. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this section, you're going to find hunting specific regulations here. So looking at this slide here in this little highlighted section down here in gray, you can see that for deer hunting on AEDC, it's not the same as statewide seasons. If you look at the little turkey icons there for the turkey season, you'll see that it says same as statewide seasons. And basically all that means is that for that WMA during turkey season, it just follows the basic general regulations that apply to the whole state. And a lot of WMAs that you click on those, you'll scroll down, and for deer hunting, it'll say same as statewide seasons. That just means that any licensed hunter can go in there during those the regular season for deer and go in and hunt. There's no quota needed. But a lot of them, like we're talking about tonight, have these quota hunts. And so when you see here on AEDC, that highlighted section there, other than the youth hunt for this WMA, which falls on the same weekend as the statewide youth sportsman hunt, there's 2 hunts listed. It says November 13th and to November 15th and November 27th to the 29th. The quota is 900. So 900 tags will be allotted for each hunt, and 2 deer of either sex may be harvested, but only 1 can be an antlered deer. And also an interesting thing about this quota is that the antlered deer also qualifies as a bonus deer, meaning that it doesn't count towards your statewide limit of 2 antlered deer per season. Not every quota hunt has bonus deer. Some of them do count towards your statewide limit, but this one in particular, the antlered deer does not. And you'll also see right there that for this quota on this WMA, you are allowed to use a shotgun or muzzleloader, so no rifles. And a lot of WMAs have specific rules like that. If you go on and you look at the application process, we'll see it here in a minute, I think, one of the next slides. Each quota hunt has a specific firearm or it's archery that you're allowed to use. Some of them are rifle hunts, so I can take my 30-30 and go out and hunt on that quota hunt, but some of them are like this one where it lists out shotgun or muzzleloader only. So you need to make sure that you're aware of that throughout the application process. And if you are selected and you do get a tag, making sure that you have the appropriate firearm with you when you go out to do that hunt. So that explains a little bit how you might go about finding a WMA that has quota hunts. If you guys have any questions on that, we can address those here in just a second. But another useful tool that you guys might not be aware of, TWRA has this thing called the Hunter's Toolbox. And what that is it's a really good way where you can go and pull harvest reports so you can see the number of deer or the number of turkey that are harvested in each area. And you can kind of start doing some research, doing some homework to see, okay, well, this WMA had this many deer harvested during this date. So for this example right here, and to back up a little bit, you can even break it down in your searches as a county-wide search, so you can see how many deer were harvested in this certain county, or you can go and filter it down to seeing what number of deer were harvested on each specific WMA. So let's look and see what this looks like. So for this one, we clicked on the deer harvest reports on that previous page, and we used the filter to search by WMAs. So we ran a search for harvest numbers during September 1st. You can see that up there at the start date through December 31st, which is basically just all of last year's deer season. So this is going to pull all the deer harvest numbers during this time for each specific WMA. Let's see here. Now, it's important to note here, too, this is going to pull every WMA. So not all of these require a quota, but it doesn't always tell the whole story. But it's useful in terms of if you know you can only hunt during, say, some of the earlier quota hunts, like in October or the early parts of November, you can run a search and see which WMAs had higher success rates during that time. And it might give you a better indication of, well, hey, maybe I should try this quota hunt out. It seems like they have higher harvest potential than this WMA over here. But again, it doesn't tell the whole story. It's just a useful tool that you guys can go in and play around with. And we'll be sure to send you guys these links. That way you can go in and kind of start navigating this system on your own if you haven't done so already. But that it can just be helpful in terms of thinking out which WMAs you might want to target for specific quota hunts. So, Chris, do you want to stop here? It looks like we've got a question.
Yeah, we can address the question. Michael asked, he says he'll be hunting public land this year for the first time, and he's specifically hunting John Tully wildlife management area. I believe that's wildlife management area. And he was asking if they'll be taking part in the quota hunt, and also talking about the velvet hunt, and has some questions that's kind of unit specific. There's probably some of the parts going to be answered later on in some of these slides, but a couple of things that I can address. So when you go into the links that we'll be providing later on in the application process, and if you look up John Tully specifically through either the interactive map or through the online big game brochure, you'll be able to see if they're going to have quota hunts or if they're going to be open statewide. With me having screen shares and everything going on right now, I hadn't had a chance to look it up, but you can definitely check it out through the resources we'll be providing you. And then talking about the velvet hunt, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but you just got to make sure that that public property is going to be open for the velvet hunt. I know some of it is private lands only, but I can't remember if the velvet hunt in August is one of those things like that. And then also, as far as not hunting out of the deer stand, but putting pop-up blinds out, all of those rules that are relative to how long a blind can be out, if it has to be removed daily, or maybe it just needs your name and phone number on it, something like that. That's always gonna be a area specific regulation. So my advice is kind of look through the brochure, look through the interactive map, get what information you can. And then if you have any more questions, that area manager, which will be listed just like Jeff just talked about with AEDC, you know, it was listed as the area manager right there. It'll have his phone number and you can reach out to them and probably get way more information than what I could give you.
Absolutely. Well, now, guys, Chris is going to walk us through how you go about applying for these quota hunts and kind of what you can expect getting ready to go through that process. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chris and we'll go ahead.
Yep. So I will go ahead and tell you, you know, I applied yesterday just while I was in there messing around, and that was the first day that the applications were open. But you're not going to be at an advantage to apply early in the process. You know, if you wait till July 20th, your name is in the hat the same amount of times with the same amount of chance as me applying yesterday. So especially if you're new to the quota hunt system, take your time. You've got a lot of time. You've got over a month. Familiarize yourself with the different options. Really dive in and do your research. And then I'm going to walk you through the application process. And I encourage you to go in there, and you don't have to completely submit your choices as we start talking about the application process. You go in there and kind of see the way it's going to work and what your options are. Maybe take some notes and go back and look at some of the resources like what Jeb covered and some of the ones that I'm going to cover here in the next few slides. So you've got some time. That's what I'm saying. Take your time and make sure you put in for the ones that you really want. Okay, so how does the draw work? So first of all, you've got to do it through a licensed agent. So Walmart or anywhere that sells licenses, you can do it through them. But the easiest way is going to be through the TWRA website or the Go Outdoors Tennessee app. And either one of them, I think I actually used the Go Outdoors Tennessee webpage on the process when I start showing you guys here in a little while. Make sure that your email is correct when you do this stuff online, because that's where all the communication is going to be. So you'll get an alert that says that you have applied, and then you also, that's how they'll notify you if you were successful or unsuccessful. And then just a little bit about how the draw works. So applicants choose specific hunts by date and location, and then they sort the preference on which hunt they would like to have. The system always awards the applicants with the highest priority first. So when you prioritize those hunts, they're going to try to fill you with the hunt that you would like most. And then if the applicant's first choice is available, it's awarded. If the applicant's first choice is not available, the program is going to move on to the applicant's second choice, either awarding that selection or moving on to the next hunter. And then it goes just like through that. If not available, the program will move on to third choice and so on and so forth. I think that there is actually, we'll double check as we get there, but I believe there's 15 choice options to prioritize your options or your hunts. And then you keep hearing us talk about the preference point system or priority points. And I'm going to try to explain this. So, you know, Jeb has more experience on the actual drawing the tag and going and harvesting a deer than I do. I'm pretty familiar with the application process, but not very lucky. But I have dealt with Tennessee's a lot, but I've dealt with the Western states a whole lot that have the same system. So I kind of thought, well, what's the best way to describe what's going on with a preference point or priority point system? And this ladder and tiers of a ladder is kind of the way I like to think of it. And you start out at 0, and then you climb the rungs. And when you get ready when they get ready to draw, they're going to take from the top. So I made up this name, the Boot Scoot and Creek WMA here. And a prime example would be, okay, so you've got a quota of 75 hunters. So there's only going to be 75 permits allocated for this wildlife management area. So on the right, you've got your applications in blue. So you had 41 apply with 7 preference points. You had 55 apply with 6, 105 with 5, so on and so forth, which is, I think this would probably be a pretty normal distribution of applicants for a popular wildlife management area. Obviously, there's going to be more people with less points than there is the maximum amount. But when they get ready to draw that, everybody, if the quota is 75, so all 41 that have 7 priority points is gonna get attacked. And then, so that leaves 34 that will be selected to fill that 75 permit quota with 6 points that will be selected. 21 of the hunters that applied with 6 points will not be selected. So if you're at 6 points, you could get a tag, but it's randomly selected inside that point on that 6th tier right there. In some states, you would have decimals. In other words, if I had 7 points and Jeb had 6 points and we applied together, we would go into the draw with 6.5 points. It would average, but Tennessee don't work like that. If you go in as a group, it's going to go to the person with your group will have the amount of points in the draw as the least amount in the party, if that makes sense. So if I had 7 points and Jeb wanted to attach and apply as a group and he only had 5, our group would only have 5. So that's why there is no decimals, and that's why you have straight tiers of 7 and 6 in this scenario. And then all the other hunters from 5 preference points and down are going to be unsuccessful, but everybody that was unsuccessful will get a priority point to use towards next year's draw. So it's in place for several of the wildlife management area quota hunts, and each point system is unique and separate. An applicant can be awarded 1 point for each unsuccessful application, and when a person is drawn for a quota hunt, the priority points reset to 0 the following year. And you can build priority points for wildlife management area big game hunts, spring turkey hunts, waterfowl, and then, as I stated, the applicants with the highest amount is going to be drawn first. And the party leader can choose who gets in their party. So, if I'm the party leader and I create a group and John Doe has 0 points and he wants to join in, I've got 6, and I'm really, me and 2 others are really wanting to draw this permit. I have the option as the party leader to not allow John Doe to attach, which would put us at 0 points in the draw. So you do have that option. And then a little spiel about the maximum number of points that's out there right now, just so you kind of know where you're standing and what you can draw with different amounts of points. Spring turkey, WMAs, the maximum amount of points out there right now is 5. Big game, the maximum amount is 13. Elk and youth elk, there is no priority system, so that's a random draw. And then the youth WMA. So that was a point I wanted to cover. I actually reached out to one of our participants that come on one of our mentored events, and he's been looking at public opportunities for his kids. And these quota hunts are probably even more important for youth applicants than they are for us, because on youth WMA big game hunts, the maximum amount of priority points out there is only 3 points. So if you have a youth that's interested in hunting, there's a good chance that you could get them on a really good youth hunt that's a quota hunt on one of these WMAs. So it don't just apply to us adults. And then you got Cherokee bear hunts, no priority. And then the wildlife management area waterfowl hunts, currently there is a maximum amount of 5. I see we've got a question here.
Yeah, Matthew asked, if you get awarded a quota hunt but cannot make the dates due to unforeseen conflict and you don't hunt, can you keep those points for another year, or do you lose them?
Unfortunately, yeah, you would lose those points. There's you won't get refunded your preference points. So that's why it's very important to pick some dates that's going to work for you. You know, you've got a lot of time to plan right now before you apply. So think about what's going to be. I know everybody is as busy as the world is this day and time. It's hard to imagine where you're going to be the first week of December, but that's just the reality of applying for these hunts. They're for an allocated time, allocated amount of people, and you just have to fit it into your schedule. And then yeah, you're going to get to see, Matthew, the historic breakdown of your preference points. I've got a screenshot of my actual preference points stats page here in just a minute. I'll share it with you guys. So if there's not any other questions of kind of how we got to the point we're at, I'm ready to walk you through the application process just like I did it yesterday. So we're going to provide the links in the follow-up email. I've got one that's going to be going out in the morning that's got the main link to apply for quota hunts and where you can get more information. A lot of the material we covered. I've got the links for the interactive maps and the hunter's toolbox. All that will be in the email tomorrow. But once you click apply for quota hunts, you're going to have to log in, and you can see your basic information here that it's asking for. And then once you do that, it's going to bring you to kind of what Matthew was asking is just your history of applications. And there's several pages. That's a screenshot of my first page there, but you can look deeper into the history of what you've drawn and what you haven't drawn. As you can see, I'm a fairly unlucky applier. But the next screen here, you see on the left that my priority points, that's that dashboard that I was referring to that you can look at and you can see your history and where you're at points wise. So I blurred out some of my personal information there, but you can, any of the hunt categories that you can build points in, it's going to be displayed right there. And again, this is going to help kind of tie into maybe your strategy of where you want to apply. I know that some of these wildlife management areas, my points level is not going to allow me to get a tag. Now, if I was dead set on hunting somewhere in Tennessee this year on one of the other wildlife management areas, I would put lots of choices, and I would start first choice with the primo hunts that we know is going to take a bunch of points. But you know, when I got down to 6th, 7th choice, I would probably be choosing a hunt that's going to be more in line with the amount of preference points I got. So this is a quick way that you can just look at that and see where you're standing. This is when you back out. So then we're going to go in and apply for a quota hunt. So you can click either one of those tabs, and that's going to bring you here. So it's got your application deadline, which is the 23rd of July. And what I found, and that goes back, I mentioned it earlier, but your maximum number of hunt choices is going to be 15. You can go through here and you select. So you can see they're in alphabetical order. It's going to tell you the quota. So in other words, how many permits are allocated for that particular hunt. It's going to tell you the weapon. So which weapon you can use during the hunt dates, and then the bag limit, and specify whether it's antlered or antlerless and all that. So at this point, when you go through, you can scroll down and scroll through the pages, and you can just put a checkbox by the hunts that you're interested in. Obviously, you don't need to just go through there and just select one because it looks cool. You need to have done your research, but you can select it, and don't worry about your preference right now. You're just going to select them. But we go through and we could select up to 15. So this is my next screen. So I had hit continue application on the last one. It brought me to this, and I only applied for one hunt. So I don't have a lot to prioritize, obviously. But if you had 12 or 15 hunts selected, they would pop up on this screen right here, and you can see where you can drag and drop, update your hunt choice order. So we're going to want to put the ones that's the most sought after, highest preference point level hunts first, and then go down the order like that. So then once we've got this arranged like we want to, and again, we're considering the hunt area, the weapon, the date, the bag limit, and you're kind of getting a second look at all of that. And then we're going to go in and you're basically going to be able to confirm your options at this point. So a little bit about it. This is your party member. I'm the party leader. I think it gave me the option if I was going to apply as an individual or as a group, or it could be just where now the second person in your group, if you're applying as a group, is going to be able to attach to your name. I'm not 100% sure, but just look for that. If you're applying as 2 or 3 people, then you just might keep an eye out for a box that might be checked for applying individually or applying as a group. And then another pretty neat thing about these quota hunts, and I think it's very important to understand, is you see that fee down there, it says free. Well, I have a lifetime sportsman's license, so all my quota hunt applications are free. And then also, Jeb, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain that if you're a sportsman's license holder, an annual sportsman's license holder, they're still also free, correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
So, you know, there's no cost associated with applying and starting to at least build points if you have a particular wildlife management area in mind. So that's the neat thing about the sportsman's license. And then once you hit confirm there, you will receive an email and then you're locked in. So I didn't see any draw results posted on TWRA's webpage anywhere, but I did take the time to go back through my emails on my personal email to see when I'd received my emails that said successful or unsuccessful. And I think I received one on like the 9th of August, and I received last year's at like the 16th of August. So it seems to me that somewhere around that first to third week of August is going to be a time when you can probably expect draw results. But again, that's not posted. That's just going off my history and experience. And that's the end of the PowerPoint. So hopefully we can get some questions, and we can definitely back up on slides if you guys got questions about any of those slides, but we'll open it up to questions now.
And we've got one right here from Russell. He just asked, will we go over bear hunts? I don't know if you're very familiar with those, Chris, or not. I don't have a lot of experience with the.
No, I know I know there is some quota hunts out there for the bears, and it's really the process. I'm not going to dive into area specific hunts, really not even species specific, just general process. But the process for your bear hunts is going to be very similar to what I was talking about with Matthew on the regular big game hunts. Is you just go into those management areas, and you could probably even filter down by species and find some of those hunts that way. I know on the big game brochure, when you go to the bear hunt, since I think a lot of the bear hunts is by quota, you'll be able to get some information, probably just generally under the species, but definitely under each wildlife management area or public land specific.
Yeah, he just real quick, he follows up on that. It says specifically talking about those group hunts, where it says minimum of 25 plus. What does that mean? Do I need to have 25 other hunters to go in on a group?
Russell, I'll be honest with you. I live in Jackson, Tennessee, and I ain't seen no bears, and I listened to all the commission meetings, and I remember exactly what you're talking about the group hunts, and there was some stuff that was voted on last year, but I'll make a note to try to get you a good contact that's probably going to be more knowledgeable than me. But Jeb, what was you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I saw that on there earlier yesterday. I have never been bear hunting. I don't have any experience in that realm specifically, but I know a lot of people up here that I've met since I started this job that do. So I could probably get some more info, and that's something we could probably get to you later on. Chris, we've got another question from Michael. He asked, so I'll be hunting in the CWD zone. if I get a quota tag and that deer tests positive for CWD, does that deer count towards the replacement deer program, or is it just a lost quota hunt?
I, I would say that you're not going to get another permit to replace that permit drawn for that quota hunt. You know, there is a couple takeaways. You know, obviously we're not supposed to eat the meat of a deer that's tested positive, but in my mind, when I'm thinking about the deer replacement, you know, that's an incentive to take more deer away, and it could wind up being something like that on a quota hunt. I'll check into it, but you know, a lot of these are managed for trophies, and whether the deer's got CWD or not, you know, you were able to harvest a deer, you were able to conduct your hunt and potentially harvest a trophy, you know, if it's on one of these trophy managed wildlife management areas. So in my mind, you kind of have fulfilled your, you know, what you would expect to get out of it. I know everybody wants to be able to definitely eat the meat of the animals that they harvest there, but I'll check into it a little bit, Michael, but I would say that you're probably not going to get a second tag, especially on these very low quota hunt, you know, the ones where they have a very small amount of people that get permits.
Got another question from Matthew. Says, can you scout out the WMA before the hunting dates? And when you're hunting, are you assigned to certain areas within the WMA, or can you hunt anywhere within the WMA?
Each one is very different. Each area is kind of specific. So if we look back at AEDC, it's an old military training ground, or still is, could be even active. I'm not sure. I did see some information about them still doing some training there, but you know, when you have a situation like that where there's multiple uses on one area going on, they're going to probably restrict you to which areas you can use and what days you can be there, just so you're not overlapping with something like military training. Same thing, President's Island. I know there's a couple, 3 scout days right before some of their quota hunts there. And that's just a couple of examples of what I know is going to be restricted to assigned areas and restricted dates in which you can scout. With that being said, the majority of your wildlife management areas are going to allow you to go in and hike potentially, you know, anytime before the actual hunt. They're just trying to restrict, again, back to what Jeb was talking about, using these quota hunts as a management tool to restrict the pressure on the properties. If you think about that, you know, going in and scouting is not taking deer off of it or overtaking a certain amount of the species off. So they're going to allow you to go in and do some scouting. But again, you can get more information about what the areas are open to through the interactive map, through the hunt brochure, and then always, those, they're hard to get a hold of. I ain't gonna lie to you. Those wildlife management, the managers over them WMAs, they're busy. They're always out of the office. They're out on the management areas doing you know, habitat work, whatever it may be. But normally, if you can leave a voicemail with them or shoot them an email or something like that, they're going to get back with you, and they're going to be a wealth of knowledge for each specific area.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Chris. I know there's a few over here in East Tennessee that there's certain zones that say you get your tag, it'll show you what area you're allowed to hunt in. One of them specifically that I know is Uchee, down between Knoxville and Chattanooga. Part of that WMA turns into a waterfowl refuge during duck season, which is going to be closer to the end of deer season. So for some of their later quota hunts, you're not supposed to be within the refuge zone. So they call it the upland zone. So just being aware of that before you go out. And on the scouting note too, it's kind of interesting that you'll notice a lot of small game hunters utilize these WMAs outside of just deer hunting. So a lot of people will go into an area and say, well, I'm going to go squirrel hunting or rabbit hunting or whatever, as long as it's open in that area. Going out and actively scouting while you're hunting another species is oftentimes a really great way to get out and kind of get familiar with WMA beforehand too. But You just got to be careful. Like we've said before, each WMA is different. So just making sure that there's not going to be a problem with you being on there at certain dates and things like that. Usually for something like that, in that scenario, it's going to be open except for the days where active deer hunts are going on. And then it's just for deer hunting on those days. Chris, while we're waiting on other questions to come in, something that I was curious about, and again, I'm still fairly new to the quota hunt system and participating in things like that. I've been deer hunting for a long time, but I've been fortunate enough to, always have some private land to hunt. But as I'm getting older, I'm kind of branching out and trying to, hunt new places, new public opportunities, things like that. And so last year I actually got a quota permit, but I wasn't selected for it in the draw. I picked it up as a leftover tag once they had all kind of been allotted. So you might know more about it than I do, but can you kind of explain how that process works and show people, like, just because you don't get drawn doesn't mean that there's still not opportunity to get a tag later?
Yeah, I wish I would have done a little more research on them leftover tags. I've dealt with them. I've applied for leftover permits in other states. And basically what it is, so we'll go back to that AEDC example where there was 1,000 permits allocated for that November, I think it was November 27th, 28th hunt. So if there is not enough applicants in this initial draw that choose that AEDC hunt as an option, so, obviously if there's only 800 people applied for 1,000 hunt or 1,000 permit hunt, then everybody that put that in as a choice is going to get a tag through this initial draw. So it wouldn't matter even if it was your 15th preference or 15th priority. When you were arranging your priority, you would have been allocated one of those permits. So what it is, so let's use that example. We had 1,000 permit quota on AEDC. We had 800 people apply. And then when leftover licenses or leftover permits go on sale or apply for, then there's 200 in that pool. Jeb, do you remember if it was a draw or if it was a first come, first serve, or how that worked?
When I got mine last year, I don't mind telling you guys which hunt it was for. I got a leftover tag for Catoosa WMA, and it's one of the larger quotas too. I think each hunt that they do for the whole area, they give out like 2,000 tags for each hunt. And so obviously not all of those got selected because I was able to get a leftover tag. But the way that they did it, the way I remember it being was first come, first serve. TWRA announced, says, hey, here's a list of all the leftover permits that nobody received. These are going to go on sale on this date at this time. Get them online, just same place you applied. You just go in, select the one you want, and it was yours. At that point, it's just a first come, first serve basis. Now they run out pretty quick, and not every WMA is going to have leftover permits, but some of those that have larger quotas, a lot of times are going to have extra permits left over. So if you apply, or if you're like me, you don't really have that many preference points, and you're not kind of at the top of the list, that doesn't mean that you can't have opportunity to hunt these areas still, because a lot of them are going to have leftover permits. So once you get into August, and kind of they've announced who received permits and how many leftovers they have, be on the lookout for that. That way you guys can take advantage of that if you still wish to do so.
Right. I think one takeaway here too, when you're talking about the way they do these quota hunts, and it's definitely to manage, it's managing the people, not the resource. The resource can manage itself. We're managing our impact on that. But each area is managed in a little bit different manner in the way of what their management goals are. So a prime example would be an antler restriction on some of the WMAs or on some of these hunts. So there's some out there that the deer has to have 5 on one side or 9 or more, or I've seen different states that have a 15-inch inside spread rule. And those are all things that's going to manage for quality. And then also managing for quality or quantity through the amount of permits that's allocated on a quota. So you're going to look across there and you're kind of going to see some of these. that there's a 5,000 acre, or that's probably a bad example, it could even be bigger than that, 10, 15,000 acre wildlife management area, and the quota for that is 50. And then you're going to see one that's 15,000 acres over here, and the quota on it is 200. Well, the reason being, one management area is being managed more for quality, while the other is managed for quantity or opportunity. So it's all about what you're wanting when you're applying. So that's just a little spiel, and this applies. I think that this virtual class will go a long ways in helping you as you look into other states. If you ever want to travel outside of Tennessee and they have a similar draw system, as far as trying to help you plan and wrap your mind around some of these other application processes.
Yeah. And it's important to note too, I think a lot of people don't realize that there's other public opportunity outside of the WMAs that require quota hunts. I mean, if you go on there to that hunter's toolbox that we were talking about, there's dozens and dozens of WMAs that have hundreds of deer harvested on them every year that don't require quotas. So, I mean, this is a great system to get in and hunt some, like Chris said, some premier hunting opportunities in the state and some really unique properties. But those aren't your only options. And, we'll be sure to send all that information out to you. But just because if you don't get a tag or, if you're still kind of figuring things out, like I said, that's okay. There's a lot of other opportunity outside of the quota system. But this is a really good way to get in on some really unique opportunity that not everybody gets to go do all the time.
That's right. And, I'll kind of leave you guys with this. We could talk for 2 hours about all the different angles there is on choosing quotas, but the biggest takeaway is pick one of these hunts. And I think why quota hunts are more productive day in, day out than non-quota wildlife management areas. It's not because of the quality of the area. I think, at least for me, let's just use and I keep going back to AEDC, I remember those dates, but okay, if I draw that November 27th through the 28th at AEDC, my mind is there. My mind is preparing for that hunt, and I'm putting more effort into preparing for that 2-day hunt at that particular area than if I did not. So let's just say I didn't have one. I'm like, well, I might go down here at Boot Scooting Creek or whatever, this Saturday, but I'm not in that thinking process of really preparing, going in and scouting. It's not something that I had to work for. I didn't have to build points for, so I'm not putting as much effort into it. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. It's June. We're way out in front of deer season. This is a great way to start right now, preparing for your fall. Pick you some dates and some areas, apply for them, put your nose to the grindstone, put in the work, go out there, ride around in the summer with your binoculars, put your feet on the ground, look at the sign, and maximize your hunt effort on those days that you're getting those permits. So
absolutely.
More's popped up here. No, thank you. But I'm glad you guys joined us tonight. I hope you guys learned something. I really enjoyed putting this one together. It's something that, I've not drawn a lot of permits, but I do try to stay up on the different wildlife management areas. And I think it'll be a fun journey of just learning the different options, and hopefully you guys will get a tag. Please send me an email with a picture of your big buck when you draw one of these quota permits and kill one this fall. So thanks for joining us. We'll be sending out an email tomorrow with our resources, and then we'll also be sending out a recording of this virtual class. If you need some assistance, on the actual application process, it could be a good idea to go back, watch this class, especially those 6 or 8 slides right there when I was doing the screenshots, and that way you know what you're kind of getting into. But thanks for joining us. If you have any more questions, you can find us at tnwf.org on the Hunting and Fishing Academy link, and we got our phone numbers and emails right there. So thanks, guys.